Hey, everyone. I just want to welcome my new guest, Matt Williams. Matt and I have a background. I was his coach. He was my client. And through that connection, wanted to have him on my podcast today because he's going to tell you all about his coaching journey, what he got out of coaching, and why it's important to hire a coach. But first and foremost, I would love for Matt to introduce himself and tell my listeners a little bit about yourself, Matt.
Hey, Wendy, thanks for inviting me on. It's great to speak to you and and be able to share this, I think, with people. It's really important, because for me, kind of jumping ahead a little bit, I'm sorry, but for me, it's one of those where it was so transformative. That's why I wanted to come on and tell people about it. And I didn't expect it to be quite as life-changing as it has been, right? I was a bit of a skeptic, I think, maybe at first is probably the right thing to say, right? But since we started working together, it's been a massive change, not just for me, but for my family as well, which is really important. My background, I suppose, I in the UK, as you can probably tell from the accent, and I was a pilot and a flying instructor in the Air Force. At the very top of my game for a long time. So kind of used to being in that environment of high achievers and, working very hard and reaping the rewards really of putting that time and effort and energy in. And I had a flying accident while I was instructing one time and ended up breaking my neck and being medically discharged from the Air Force. So lost that kind of career that I'd had since I was 18. I was one of the first pilots in the Air Force to join as a direct entry pilot. So straight in from kind of high school. You used to have to do university and get a degree, and they did a trial with us and put us through. So I hit the front line really young and became the youngest helicopter instructor in the Air Force. And like I say, high flying, right? Going on to do test pilot stuff and fast jet stuff and kind of cut down in my prime. And I was lost for a long time, if I'm honest. But we, had a young family at the time, just got married when the accident happened, and first baby was on the way. So kind of had to drag ourselves, turn it around. You haven't got a choice when you get to that stage, right? And we built a business that then went on to become the biggest of its kind in the UK and the biggest of its kind in Europe. So again, managed to achieve quite a lot, but wasn't happy, still hadn't found me, if that makes sense, and I wasn't sure of kind of the reasons I was doing it all, and I was just doing it, and it grew very quickly because we built a great reputation, and then I got to the point where I ended up getting, for me, I suppose the only way I can describe it, because it's not something I'd ever experienced before, was I thought of it at the time as being quite depressed, but actually I think it was more, looking back from the work we've done, it was actually probably more about being lost and not being clear on where I was and needing to just get that kind of bit of me back so that I could set some goals properly, be held accountable, learn about myself and move forward. So yeah, it was a very interesting journey from kind of peak performance, high flyer, literally and figuratively, and then losing my way, building something incredible, but still, it's funny, you look at people and think, oh, they're so successful, they've got everything and they're doing really well, but you never quite know what's going on in the background. And and that's what we unpicked, right?
Well, and that's so interesting that you said that, Matt, because it is a very common reason why a lot of the clients come to coaching is because they are lacking clarity, or they are feeling lost, like directionless. I was the same when I started working with my coach as well. It's kind of like, I like to paint the picture of, it's like you're at a crossroads and you really don't know what to choose. And so that can be a real catalyst for seeking help, right? Because you can read a lot of self-help books and you can listen to a lot of podcasts, but at the end of the day, sometimes you just need that partner to guide you through and help you along the way. So tell us a little bit more about that, because I think you said something really interesting, that in working with a coach, right? That's where you realized it wasn't maybe depression, it was more of lack of clarity and you needed some guidance along the way.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I think since I was quite young, really, in a position of responsibility and authority and power. I've done a lot of instructing over the years, which actually has a lot of parallels to the coaching side of things that I've found throughout our journey. And, actually, when you're teaching someone to fly like I was, it's not just, I didn't have them at the basic stage, so I didn't have students and teach them to fly. I taught them how to use the aircraft as a platform for doing whatever it was that we were going on to do, and how to think differently in terms of, the aircraft effectively has to become an extension of you, and it has to become second nature to fly. You are now using your brain, not your hands and feet, to actually do something with the aeroplane. And without knowing about it, going through that process and working with different personality types and different people all the time, different levels of ability, different levels of capacity, meant that there were a lot of parallels in that training. And I think that for me, I automatically assumed that because I've been in that world, well, I can read the books, I can listen to the tapes, I can watch the YouTube, and I'll be okay, because I get it, right? What personal development is. I've spent my entire life learning and teaching, but it's not until I think you get into talking through it with someone else. You can, like you say, read the books and learn as much as you want, but it's not as effective. I wasted years of my time, basically, I would say. I wish we'd done what we did over the 3 months as it was at the time 6 years ago. And I hadn't spent that time trying to hunt for someone or something to latch on to give me that clarity and give me that momentum. And it was a big deal, right? Like for me, it was a big investment of time and money to come and do that.
Yeah.
But, it wasn't long ago that we finished that first round in the grand scheme of things. And, we've already gone on from what we've done to that investment is insignificant now in terms of the extra productivity and drive and direction that it's given me.
Yeah. And, I think it's important for people to hear what you said, because you said you were successful. Well, you still are successful, to be quite honest, Matt, but it wasn't because of lack of success. There was just something missing, right? So tell the listeners, really, through the coaching journey, what were your biggest insights on yourself and biggest takeaways, learning, successes? Because if people don't know, my training or my coaching framework is 12 to 16 weeks. And so you're talking about 3 to 4 months of transformation for you personally. So I would love for you to share those key takeaways, those key, wins for you, so that people can understand the power of the framework.
Yeah, I think, if I'm honest, the piece as a whole was so powerful because it all works together, right? It's a contiguous piece, and it's not just, it feels very much when you're going through it, from my perspective. And because I did my very best to throw myself into it completely and do all the homework and do all the, the reflection and things like that, that the me a year or two before would never have done, right? Because this isn't going to work. And then actually, no, if you commit to it, it does. And I think the biggest things for me were understanding more about what's driving me, because we identified that very early on. And actually once that fell into place, and actually I got over the barriers and the ego that you put up that actually underpin what it is that you're trying to achieve. Once you realize what you're doing it for, the kind of the reason you're getting up every day and you want to make this work, and, and all of a sudden then everything else falls into line. Your procrastination disappears because you're like, no, I know why I need to do this today and tomorrow and the day after, because I'm fighting for this thing. And that is my primary focus. And I'd never thought about it at that base level before. I'd always just thought, I'm trying to bring in some money to pay the bills and, to earn a wage and to be able to do what we want to do, go on the holiday, or, buy the bigger house or buy the nicer car. And actually it's way, way more kind of basic and fundamental and intrinsic than that.
Yeah. And I love that you're sharing that, right? And I think, if we can get personal, I think it's vulnerability that really gave you the success as a client. And like you said, you threw yourself in and you did the work, because a coach can only take you so far, right? You got to be willing to put in the work too. And you got to be ready. And that's why I love the connection we made, Matt. And I said that the whole time, right? Like I felt that it was palpable in you of how much you wanted to like throw yourself in, even with you being skeptical, like you shared, right?
Yeah.
You were willing just to go, okay, screw it. I'm going to go feet first. I'm going to get everything, squeeze every last drop out of this juice. Right. Yeah. And look what happened. And I think, if I can share the last time we spoke, when Nat came on the phone, your wife, she said, not only have you made a difference for Matt, but you made a difference for everyone in the family. And that has resonated with me ever since I heard that. And that was like a month ago. So how have you changed so much that it's impacted the loved ones in your life? Right. I'd love for you to share that.
Yeah, that's it. I think the big one, sorry, just looping back to what you just said, like the being ready for it, was a massive one for me. And I talked to you about this on our journey together, and don't mind sharing it now. Like a year and a half before, I wouldn't have considered the coaching journey at all. I don't think. I thought I was in a good place, and I didn't think that it could make as much any difference, let alone the difference it did. I was like, what a waste of money and time, right? Speaking to someone, and it genuinely couldn't have been further from the truth. And and I think that in turn, I was at that place. It was like, no, I've got to do this and try and find myself and make a difference. And actually, it was interesting, right? Because the thing we picked up on was the family thread and wanting to provide for them. That was fundamentally what's driving me every single day and night and weekend. And because I committed to it, and one of the big things that we talked about on the way through was starting to do things that make you comfortable with being uncomfortable, and things that push you slightly outside your comfort zone. And if you don't make a change, if you don't try and do something, if you're thinking about it, then nothing's going to change, right? Like it all stays the same. And if you're happy with that, awesome. If not, if you want to make a change, then you've got to make the change. You've got to make steps towards it at least. And by doing that, and rather than just sitting there and being like, yeah, whatever, and I think, and thinking about making the changes, or thinking about, for us, moving to Canada as a family, right? Because that's what we've always dreamt of doing. And it's like, actually, do you know what? No, you've got to make these changes. And that was, I think, for me personally, with the type of personality that I am and the success, I guess, that I've had over the years because of the hard work I've put in, the big thing for me wasn't just the going through the processes that we went through and going through the training that we went through. It was knowing that I was going to come back to you the following week at the same time, and you were going to push me on the new thing that we were learning and talking about, but also holding me accountable to, have I done it or not? And actually, if you don't do it, if you don't commit, if you don't throw yourself in, if you don't then follow through, it's a waste of everyone's time and money, right? Ultimately. So I was like, no, we're gonna have this. And we just implemented everything, trust in the systems, trust in the experience of the person that's coaching you. And you find your own way, right? That's what coaching kind of is all about. It's about finding it yourself, not necessarily, and being guided and facilitated to that realization. But there's so much knowledge and understanding and power in the frameworks and the experience that someone like yourself has, that it can be totally transformative if you're receptive to it and willing to put your heart and your mind and your body sometimes on the line, right?
Absolutely. And, you made a great point. And I think it's important to people to hear, like, the framework is what it is. And I trust that process implicitly, because what I have experienced as a coach is that each client is very unique in what they take away from that, right? Because your goals are different, your personalities are different. And I think that is what makes a great coach too, right? That person who recognizes that not everybody is you, Matt. That's for sure. So I don't have every client who, is so dedicated to doing the homework or pushing forward through action. But you're right. My job is to recognize that and go, you know what? I hear what you're saying, but like, is that what you want really? Right? Is that really how you want to show up for yourself or your family or whatever that connection, whatever that thread is for that client? Because that is the game changer for people. And people, I believe, want to work with a coach because they are wanting direction. They do want accountability. They do want a push, but they don't want to be told what to do. They want to discover what their path is. And the coach's job is just to sort of go, okay, this is what you want. I'm just going to remind you, right? Yep. I'm your reminder. I'm like your Jiminy Cricket. And I'm going to say, okay, but you said you wanted to do this. What's holding you back? And we remove those obstacles or excuses or whatever you want to call them, right, for that client so that they can get what they desire. And that's really I think it's a really interesting dance.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. And I think one of the big things that I didn't expect, and one of the things that I found was that by me flexing and pushing myself outside my comfort zone, by committing to the process so hard, that also meant that you kind of committed to the process hard as well. And in that way, I felt as though, because I prepared for our sessions and kind of thought about what was probably going to come up and all that sort of stuff. And that meant that I could then maximize the kind of your experience and your knowledge and our time together, rather than just it being an hour of conversation and getting told this is what I'm going to do. And it was like, no, this is both of us working together to achieve the best, best outcome possible.
And you definitely did show up, Matt. I think I've said that to you multiple times, even in our sessions. You came prepared to do the work. So, again, let's go back to really your experiences and what were the biggest changes for you? Like, I know that we got some momentum in the goals that you wanted to achieve for sure, but I think it was more, I guess I'll say, I think it was deeper than that for you through the coaching process. And I see that in a lot of my clients. It's not just getting stuff done, because you could go to anybody and just, what did you do last week? How are you feeling? What are you going to commit to? That's not how that process works with me. So I've been really interesting on the deep dive, right? What really changed for you psychologically, emotionally, like all of the deep stuff?
Yeah, everything. It's really, that's it. Easy. I'm done. It was a fundamental change in my understanding of me and my drivers. And, even I think when I started, and one of the reasons I was skeptical, and it probably is the same for lots of people I don't know, because I've not dealt with those many people in this situation, but it's one of those where I came in expecting to all right, I need to be more productive and procrastinate less and get more done and make more money and be more successful. I need to be able to do more with my time. And actually, those things are there, the tools are there, and we got to that position, right? Like the amount of work that I have generated, but also at the same time taking my boys swimming every weekend, and I take them to school every day now and pick them up every day from school, and we play for an hour, together before I make us all dinner, and then I go back and do some work once they're asleep, and that change has been massive. It's been monumental, because realizing why you're doing things. Like, you're working hard to earn the money to do what? Like, to provide for your family. But actually, the whole providing for your family for me, that was one of the driving factors. And getting that dialed in then means that you are more productive and able to do more in the time you have. Because actually, I suppose one of the biggest realizations we had was like, I was doing so much all the time, but it wasn't necessarily making progress towards where I wanted to be. It was actually taking me away from the things that I love and enjoy and, dive into. So I think for me, it's way more than that. I expected to come in and get X, Y, and Z, but actually we went 2 or 3 layers deeper than that, I think, and changed how I communicate with my wife. Like, we have a great relationship, and we've always, my ride or die, as we said, right? And we've always felt as though we've communicated really well and we understand each other. But actually, there were a couple of sessions where you and I talked about a few different things, and it was like, crikey, yeah. And I went away and was vulnerable with my wife and talked about those kind of things with her, and it resonated with both of us. So now even our relationship is so much stronger than it was, to the point that we're moving, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, it's exciting. That was one of our connections too. But you did, before we move on to that, it was so interesting you said that, and you haven't talked about it, but I remember that session where it was about, how do you have fun? Just Matt, have fun, right? Because that was lacking. And that was part of one of our sessions, is how do you recharge? How do you spend time just like for you? Yeah. And that was a big change for you too, I believe.
Huge. Yeah. I mean, so it was one of those things, that kind of penny drop moment, right? Where like, oh man, yeah, I'd never even thought about that. Like, I do nothing for myself. All I do is for everybody else. No wonder I'm feeling burnt out. Right. And, and it sounds so almost simplistic, like, to people who are listening, or you and I having this conversation now, it's like, well, yeah, of course you got to go and do stuff for yourself. Right. Like, I don't go on holidays. And you think, God, I was doing everything. Like, all of my days from waking up to going to sleep were about trying to be productive. But actually, most of it was sat around not achieving a lot, spinning my wheels, because I didn't know where I was going or why or what I was trying to achieve. And yeah, and a big part of that now, like my wife and I remember saying this to you at the time, like, I feel really daft saying this, right? A grown man. But like, I enjoy playing Call of Duty. And my wife really enjoys playing Call of Duty. Like, that was, so I've bought us both an Xbox now. We've got an Xbox in each room. And we put a little headsets on when the kids go to sleep, and we sit in different rooms, weirdly, in the house, but we play on the Xbox together and chat away for an hour. And we do that every night now. And it's amazing. It's just like, we do that and then we go to bed and watch telly and stuff and crash. But yeah, it's little things like that, and realizing those things that make a huge amount of difference, because our relationship is stronger, and that means I can get more done. Right.
Yes, so it's kind of, absolutely. And I mean, that's why I wanted to bring that up, because I think as high producers, right, people who want to achieve more and are very focused, they forget that stuff. They forget to have fun. And when you're not recharging or having fun, you do risk burnout. That's one thing. But it's also like, the fun part of our lives motivates us to be more productive in the work part of our lives. Yep. And it's amazing that we forget that when we get into adulthood, right? Because of all the other things that we're responsible for. And it just is such a game changer. So I'm so glad that we talked about that, because I think that is an integral part of one of the sessions, like specifically the energy session early on in the framework, where clients really discover that sometimes missing piece in their lives affects their productivity, and they never really connected the dots.
That's it. And actually, for me, realizing that and then putting into place, I've already blocked out a bit of time to go on a summer holiday, and we've blocked out time to go skiing next year, which we've never done before as a family. It's something I used to do when I was a lot younger, before the accident, but I want to get back to doing, right. And it's like, now there is a reward almost. I get that dopamine hit of getting something completed. Right, I'm going to get these 3 things done today. Bang, bang, bang. Mm-hmm. Right, those are done. Now it's time to play on Call of Duty for a couple of hours or whatever it might be, because you've earned it, rather than just meandering your way through the day or whatever it might be. So yeah,
intentionality, really, right? Being more intentional, the way we live our lives every day. And I think that's another breakthrough as well. So tell my listeners a little bit about your journey now, like your personal stuff, because this was a big connector for us as coach and client, because for those who don't know, I am Canadian. I am originally from the Ottawa area. I was actually born and bred in the city of Ottawa, and soon to move back to the Ottawa Valley. And you're from the UK, if people didn't get the accent yet. Yeah. But tell them like that big connector that we had. And I mean, I think it kind of helped our coaching relationship, because we always had that thread.
Yeah, that's it. So my wife, we were married for over 10 years, no, just over 10 years now. And my wife's got some family in Ottawa, aunts and uncles in Ottawa. And we used to come and visit them every 6 to 12 months or so. And we've always loved it. And about when we first got married, we actually looked at buying a house in Ottawa. And we didn't, for whatever reason at the time. It wasn't a good time, right? There's never a good time. And that's the thing. There is never a good time. There's never a right time to make these kinds of decisions and make these moves. And I just had the accident. We were actually, looking back, the perfect place to make that decision then. But it's easier to stick with what you know and safer to stick with what you know. And I get that sometimes we have to. But actually, if you want to make that change, right? And through the discussions you and I had throughout the coaching course, Nat and I thought long and hard about it. And we just said, you know what, there is not going to be a good time. There's not going to be the right time to do this. So let's just get it done. So Nat applied to go to university in Canada. She's just been offered a place at Algonquin College, and we are moving in 5 months' time as of doing this today. So we found out last week, and house is going on the market this week. And Nat's got a place at uni. The boys have got a place at school. Lock, stock, and barrel. We're going to pack up and fly out, because what's the worst that could happen, right? Like, we've not got loads of money. We've not got loads of, but we're just going to come because, you know what, we'll make it work there the same as we've made it work here. But rather give it a go than sit here and for another 10 years saying, oh, maybe we should do that. Maybe we should do it. It's like, no, let's get ourselves in a position to go. Let's get it done. This is what we want. So let's do what we need to do to make it happen. And that is a huge change that has come from, when we started a few months ago.
And it's really interesting because in further sessions in framework, definitely talk to my clients about that too, right? Like, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you don't want to have regrets at the end, right? So what are some of the things that you've always wished you could do, but you've held yourself back because of fear or because it may not be the right time or whatever. And sometimes that leads that client down that road, right? For you came into the session saying, hey, this was one of our goals, but I think that goal really got legs during our session together as well. Like, it became super reality because, first of all, I knew it was one of your goals, so I didn't let you let it go, right? Like, I definitely did not let you let that go because you had so many reasons why it was important to you. And it was even beyond not having family here and liking the city, it was building a life for your family too. And I remember that was your why. Like, we go back to that why, the catalyst to take action. And that, I feel, was really what you discovered during our time together as well. Like, you always knew you wanted to go, but now the reason why was way more in front of you. And that sort of like, made it come to fruition. And like you said, it's like 5 months away, which is very exciting.
That's it. I mean, this time last year, it was one of those things that we said we might do it one day. Oh, we'd love to do that, as I think most people tend to do, right? And I think it was, Nat and I as well, before you and I started the coaching relationship with each other, have both been quite ill over the last couple of years. And it's one of those that, we didn't know whether the boys ultimately were going to be orphaned at some point. Right. So it was that level of both of us being poorly. And I think particularly one of the things we set it as a goal, I mentioned it as a goal at one of the first sessions. I think the very first session we had, actually, like, what would be the ultimate thing you could go and achieve and do with your life and blah. And I'm like, right, we've both been ill. We've both always said we want to go to Canada. It's like, okay, cool. How can we make that happen? I'm like, well, by doing X, Y, and Z. And it's like, okay, cool. Let's make that happen then. I'm like, okay, cool. And that's kind of what we worked on. And then, because everything falls into place, right? Once you realize that why, which was building a better life and legacy and more opportunities for the kids and things like that than we've got here, where we are right now in England in particular. And and it was just that switch flicking. And I think literally you asked, one of the questions in one of the sessions was that whole, if you were looking back on your life now, what would be the thing that you would look back on and think, oh, I wish I'd given that a go, or I wish I'd tried that. I wish, what would you want that to be? And I was like, well, we want to be in Canada, right? That would be the one, that would be the big regret. Like, we've tried and done most other things, and that's the big thing that we haven't achieved. So so that was it then. When he sent us off on a mission to make it happen, and it has. So
well, you wanted it to happen, and I think that's the magic, yeah. Right? And it's interesting how that kind of like took wings. It really took on its own life. And always, I think an important part of the coaching journey for a coach who is like really engaged in the process with their client is they don't let that stuff go for their client, because sometimes you need that, right? You just need somebody to go, hey, I heard you say this. Now I want to remind you again. And how are you doing towards that? Because we get busy, right? Or we put things off because it's hard sometimes. It's hard to get over the hump. And I think that's why when you have that magic in a relationship with your coach, things start to really fall in place. That's just my personal opinion as a coach and as a client, because as you know, Matt, I've shared this with you. I was a client as well, right? And I still have a coach. And it's you just need sometimes someone in your corner. And that's how I see my coach, who will go, hey, guess what, Wendy? You said you wanted this. So what are you doing about it? Because even coaches need coaches. Because guess what? We fall off too, because we have a lot of stuff going on in our lives as well. So, I think if you were to, give advice to someone who was looking for the right match, because I think not every coach is for every client and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
What would be your perspective? I could tell you what I look for as a coach for my clients, but as a client, what are some of the things that really made it work in the relationship that you had with me as your coach? Because you're going to get a different experience, even using the same framework, depending on the coach. Right. So I'd love for you to share that. And it's not about working with me specifically, but what about that relationship is important for a client to look for?
I think someone potentially, if you've got the opportunity and the option, do your research on the person that you are going to work with in the coaching circle to make sure that there is perhaps some similarity or a hook that you can both work together on or hold in common. For us, I mean, there was the really strange kind of serendipitous thing of the Ottawa connection, as loose as that was at the beginning of the relationship. But I think you get that instinct straight away, right? And not everyone is everyone's people. We are all different. It's the variety, there's the variety of life and all that sort of stuff. But I think if I hadn't clicked with the person I was coaching with, I wouldn't have got as much out of it as we did. And that wouldn't have worked for me. That wouldn't have been a useful, effective investment of my time more than the money. So I would have probably said, look, I don't think we're right for each other. And I think you can tell that quite quickly, generally, I would suggest, particularly with the framework that we were using and the experience you have and my kind of experience of working with lots of different people over the years, you can tell, right, almost straight away. So I think it's about being open and honest with yourself. Again, like, this process only works if you're vulnerable and you're willing to throw yourself into it. And that actually, I think, comes from both sides, because I think you probably shared some things with me which you perhaps wouldn't have shared with anyone, or not many people at all. And it is an interesting relationship that you form, and that bond that you form if you do gel together. But I can see that if you're not right for each other, then you wouldn't get the most out of it, because you can't be vulnerable with someone that you don't trust or like or respect. And so I think, does that answer the question? And that for me would be the big thing.
Absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, Matt, really quickly if you're connecting with that person. You should know that in the first session, if not by the second session. And I'm totally okay with that for my clients, by the way, in Resolve coaching and consulting, is like, if we're not a good fit, And usually I can get that on the discovery call. Like if I'm not a good fit for them, I can call it out then, and I will refer them to someone else. But if the client in their first actual coaching session after our introduction feels like we're not a good fit, I'm okay with that, because the reason I coach is to help people. It's not about me, right? So if I don't feel like they're going to be successful working with me specifically, I will let them know. And if they don't feel like they're going to be successful working with me specifically, I'm okay with it too. It's not personal, because it is their journey and it's their investment, and they got to get their money's worth. Like, I think there is some value in putting money to it for sure, because you don't put in the work if you don't pay for it. But if you're paying for it, it's my job to be your connection. And if I'm not, I'm okay with it, because there will be the coach that person needs for their needs. You know, I think that made sense. I kind of said needs a lot there, but yes. And I think the other thing we connected on specifically, Matt, is we're both entrepreneurs, right? So there was that connection as well. Yes. And that helped us in productivity big time.
It did.
It helped you in productivity.
It did. Well, probably helped you as well. Yeah, that's it. I think that's one of the things we found, right? Like I say, because we had that click, because we had that connection, it really did work. And, you know, I think it is one of those, I was there to get a certain thing or things out of it, but hopefully I think when you get that right, it also helps whoever you're working with as well. We're always learning, right? That's the whole point that I didn't get necessarily at the beginning behind this kind of self-development journey, is that actually you need to learn I almost had to learn how to learn again, right? And be open to learning again. And once my brain switched on to that, I think I mentioned it to you one time, right? I think we were about 3 or 4 sessions in, and I remember saying, like, I feel as though I'm on this grassy meadow with the golden sun coming down, and open the glass door, and there's like, oh my God, there's another meadow beyond it that's like, I didn't even know that was there. Oh. And it smells better and it tastes better and all that sort of stuff. So, and I'm not like this, right? Like,
yes, no. When you came
that was the thing
coaching,
that scared me. I was like, what?
You were definitely not into that. And I think people need to know that about you. Like, you know, I'm very woo-woo, and I tell my clients that, like, I'm super woo-woo, but you came in, like you said, skeptical. You are very like pragmatic. That's a good word, right? Very practical, very logical. And then you're like talking about meadows and sunshine and smells and like
Wendy, what have you done to me?
Yes. It's like, but those things, like, they're all in us, right? And I think that's really interesting point that you made, Matt, is like people label themselves a certain way, but through the coaching experience, like, we all have all of those things in us. And so as you get coached, those things start to open up in your psyche and your subconscious, like all the things. And it's a really cool experience. It really is.
It really was. It's interesting and different, and it was slightly scary at first, but it's really good. Because I'm the physics guy, right? I'm the test pilot guy that does everything logically and has all his checklists and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, what have you done to me? But no, it's
Matt's all woohoo now.
Oh God,
and then Matt's like, who are you, Matt? Like, you're a new man.
Yeah, but it worked. Thank you.
Well, no problem. And I mean, I just think, you know, we're laughing about it now, Matt, but it really is interesting, because I think that for some clients, that is their experience, right? They open up different sides of themselves. And I think that's what makes coaching so unique. And, you know, I love to share this too. You're starting your own coaching business too now. So let's talk a little bit about that, and let's promote that. Like, that's what my podcast's all about. We're here to help other people, like whatever journey they're on, to like promote what they're doing. But this was really cool. You told me about this before we started recording, and I want you to share what you're doing. What's the next meadow for Matt?
That's it. No, thank you. So the business we created was, we started off in the drone world when I left the military, and we saw kind of drones coming, and we knew that there were going to need to be licenses and certificates for them. And with my background in full size kind of manned crewed aviation, we could see that there was going to be a potential for an interaction, right, between someone flying their drone as a toy in the same place that I was flying my helicopters and fast jets at low level, the same places my friends now are flying their fast jets around. And we all have families and we all want to go home. And I had a bird strike in Iraq in 2010. I was flying at low level at night on goggles, and massive explosion inside our aircraft. And everyone thought we'd been hit by a rocket propelled grenade and that I'd been blown clean out of the aircraft. There was a hole where I was, all the glass had shattered everywhere. Everyone was covered in blood and no one could get me on the intercom. And luckily for me, we hadn't hit an RPG or been hit by an RPG. A seagull had come through the window and hit me in the face. Well, it hit me in the chest and the face and broke my ribs, broke my body armor, knocked me unconscious. And I was flying the aircraft at the time, right? So luckily when we're doing those kind of jobs, we always fly with a co-pilot who is also kind of equally skilled, if you like. And he, in this instance, took control, landed the aircraft, and I woke up in hospital kind of a day later. And that's the kind of damage that a drone could do to an aircraft at low level, right? So my mission has been to teach people and do the public speaking circuit that is the problem. This is the thing that people need to realize. Yes, you're flying a toy drone around, but if someone comes along in a fast jet or a helicopter at low level and collects it, the energy involved is unimaginable. It's quite strange. So that's why I've spent 8 years teaching people, right? And we've built that into the biggest drone training school in Europe. And we've taught tens of thousands of people. And now moving on from that, I now have set up a mentoring school. So we take people who've got their certificates and we show them then how to build a business. But a big part of that journey is actually self kind of development. It's personal development. It's learning about yourself, as I've done with you. And it kind of opened my eyes up to that. And I knew it was always something that I wanted to do. I'd always done business mentoring and guidance for people because we've been successful in that world. In a number of different elements of it. I was like, no, since we finished, I'm like, no, I need to do this, right? I have felt the calling. My meadow side has been opened and felt the calling. So now, yeah, I've created a framework and I've started to load people onto that within the kind of aviation world and the drone industry. And it's interesting because they all kind of fit into a box. I hate pigeonholing people because I hate being pigeonholed. But if you were to stuff a hole full of people in the drone world and the aviation world, we're very similar. And we all go in the same hole. So yeah, so I've created a training program for us, for people in that world, which takes them from basically on the journey that I went on, I suppose, but in a slightly different take on it, because that's what that personality type needs. Yeah. And it's been really successful. We've been going on that side for a couple of weeks now, and we've got lots of people signed up to it already, and lots of people asking to come on the next round. So yeah, it's incredible. So again, that wouldn't have happened had we not gone on that journey. And that's why I say, that investment of, I said it was 12 weeks, but it ended up being, it was 16 weeks, wasn't it?
It was 16 weeks. Yeah.
That investment of time, spending that hour together every week for 16 weeks is quite a lot. It comes around fast as well. You're like, oh, it's training again, it's coaching again. When you do all the homework and the pre-work and bits and pieces, if you throw yourself into it, it's a lot. And then, it isn't cheap, right? Let's face it. But you are paying for that expertise and that guidance and that time. And like I say, I wish I'd done it sooner, because we have, I think, well, in just launching my own coaching program since we've finished, I've probably done 10 times the amount that it cost me to come and join you. So yeah, if you're thinking about it, get off the fence.
Get off the fence. I love that.
Get off the fence and have the discovery call. Oh my God.
But you know what's super interesting, because this is really like, it just hits my heart hard when you said, now you're coaching others, because now we have created a ripple effect, right? And it started with you. And started with you and me. But it's rippling into the aviation industry, where you can help people, like you said, in your zone of genius, let's call it that. But it is about discovering that it's more than the drone and the technical side. Now you're opening up the human side of being in that industry as well. And so very important that you share all of your businesses on this podcast so people know where to find you, Matt. So over to you. And I know you're going to send me the links as well, because we want people to, know about you and what you do, and who knows, somebody who flies a drone might need your expertise. So where can people find you?
So it's uavhub.com is the training school that we currently own. And then thedronementor.com that's where people can find me moving forwards. I'm moving away from the UAV hub side of things, but that's the school that we created. And yeah, the Drone Mentor is that's who I am. That's the new me, the new Meadow Matt.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's the new Meadow Matt, which is fantastic. So as always, I just want to thank you so much for joining me today, Matt. And I'm just so glad the universe put us together back, months ago. It was probably 6 months ago when we first started working together. And I always say the universe gives you what you need when you need it. It's one of my favorite sayings. And the universe gave you me, but more importantly, the universe gave me you. I don't know if I said that correctly. I think I meant it the other way around. It works either way. Yes, but either way, I think that connection is going to be something that we're going to have long term in our lives. We've talked about that already, but it has been a pleasure to work with you as your coach, Matt, but more importantly, to have you on my podcast today so that you could share your journey and your experience through the coaching framework that I use specifically, but I can't say enough. And the other thing too, I would recommend for clients is look for testimonials, right? So you should be able to find your coach on the internet, either on their website with testimonials, either on their Google business page, whatever it is, because it really is real testimonials from real clients, and that can help you choose the right coach for you. And I know, Matt, you're going to have a ton of them from your group too, so that those people will find you as well. So thank you again. Have a wonderful rest of your week. And be sure, guys, to look Matt up on the Drone Mentor.